One of the questions we get asked most often is about knives and how to use knives, specifically cuts of vegetables. So today I want to talk to you about what knives you might want to have in your arsenal, for lack of a better term, and then I'll just show you some basic cuts that you're going to use in the kitchen. One of the first knives you're definitely going to want to have is a paring knife. Paring knives range anywhere from 2 to 4 inches, very easy to hold in your hand and serve a variety of purposes. Another knife you want to have is a chef knife or a French knife. This is an 8-inch chef knife, but they can be 10, 12 inches, and even down to 5 inches. And the key to having a knife really is the knife that feels comfortable in your hand is the right knife for you. Another knife, the third knife I think you should always have, would be a serrated knife or a bread knife. Obviously, they're perfect for bread, but also great for slicing tomatoes and any sort of delicate vegetables. They'll work fine. But these two knives here are really going to do most of the heavy lifting in the kitchen. And what I want to start with today is the paring knife. And I'll show you just basically how to dice an onion and how to finely dice an onion. And basically, I have a peeled onion, and I'm just going to cut it in half. Okay? And then the first half, I'm just going to go ahead with my paring knife. And you see how I have my hand here, my fingers. I'm going to use this finger here as a guide. And I'm just going to make a series of cuts with my paring knife, straight down, moving my hand back, always using that finger as a guide. Just moving my hand back. So you see I've got all these cuts. And then I simply, using the same motion, am going to cut straight down across the cuts that I made. And then you'll see what I have here is a perfectly diced onion. Now, we're going to finely dice an onion because you'll see sometimes it says dice and sometimes it says finely diced. To finely dice an onion, it's simply the same move, but I'm making smaller cuts, which is to say there's less space in between my cuts than there were before. And I'll go straight down just like I did before, again, using my finger as a guide. And then what I'll do is I'll make a series of cuts going the other way. Just like that. The key is always to keep your fingers away from the blade. That's common sense. And then, same cuts again, going straight down across. And then you can see that my dice on this is finer. Same cuts, just different length in between. Now we're going to get into the chef's knife, which I think is a greatest knife. I use this knife for pretty much everything in my kitchen. And I'll start with a potato, and we're going to do the same thing here, but I want to start with a flat surface, okay? Just like we had for the onion. So I'm just going to take a little bit off of the potato and then rest it on the flat surface. And we're going to show you a couple of different cuts here. I'm going to show you a julienne, and then I'm going to show you a dice on the potato. The julienne, I'm going to just make some very thin slices, just like that, and I'll set those aside. And then for the dice, I'm just going to do thicker slices. So it's the same motion, again, using my finger as the guide. So I have just two different thicknesses of slices. And for the julienne, I'm just going to stack my slices up and make very thin cuts right across. Again, same process, always using my hand as a guide, going straight across. And then there's my julienne. Okay? And then for a dice, it's going to be the same idea. I'm just using wider cuts. Okay, so I'm basically left with sort of French fry shapes here. And then just to dice, I'll line them up in a neat little row. Again, using my hand as a guide. And I'm just going to cut straight down. And there's my dice. Similarly, if I wanted to go ahead and make a fine dice, I would just take some of my julienne strips. Same process. I'm lining them up. And then I'm just making smaller cuts. And the last thing I want to show is mincing. And mincing, more often than not, pertains to garlic. And that's something I think everybody uses in the kitchen. And mincing your own garlic is a snap. And it's really all about the motion. So I've got 2 cloves of garlic here. And I'm just going to start by doing some very rough cuts on my garlic. Keep it all in a pile. And then it's the same motion. So I have my garlic in a pile here. I'm going to take the tip of my chef's knife, and I'm going to hold it on the board, and I'm going to hold it steady with this hand. Rest of the time, I'm just rocking it back and forth over the garlic. Every now and then, you need to get it back into its pile. Tip of the knife goes back down on the board. Just rock it back and forth over the garlic repeatedly until you get it very small bite-sized, not even bite-sized pieces, smaller than bite-sized pieces. So it's perfect for pastas, perfect even raw to go into salad dressings or salads. And this is a great motion to use not only for garlic, but for fresh herbs. If I was going to chop parsley, I would use the exact same motion. And again, I'm just holding the tip of my knife over and just running the business end, the back end of the knife, just back over the garlic, back and forth until it's smaller. Now, if you wanted to do this with onions, if you wanted to take your finely diced onions and mince them, you could just go ahead and use the same exact motion. Just run your knife back over and over and over until you get the size you're looking for. And you can see all the processes are pretty much the same. The key is really to keep your fingers away from the blade. Get comfortable with a knife, practice at home, get a couple of potatoes. The more comfortable you come with a knife, much easier things are going to be in your kitchen.